So I often see people arguing about what's the best way to learn jiu-jitsu. Some people say that the best way to learn is to focus on learning big principles and concepts that can be used in multiple situations rather than memorizing a bunch of different techniques. While other people take an extreme analytical approach and they try to break everything down into systems and algorithms so that they have an answer for every different situation. In my opinion, I think one of these is absolutely the best method. However, they both do have merit. And if you aren't maximizing each of these learning methods, both as a student or if you're a coach, you'll seriously limit the speed in which you can develop for both yourself and your students. So before going into which one of these I think is superior, I want to explain context first for each one of these and where they're strong and where they're weak, so you can understand where each method has strengths and weaknesses and then decide for yourself which one you prefer. So let's start off with understanding systems and organized learning first. So in my opinion, systems work best in situations where there's a low amount of variables. If you think of chess, you can calculate ahead when there's limited options. If I have checkmate in 2 moves and I call check on my opponent, he has to move out of check. That's the rules of the game. And if there's only 2 or 3 possible moves for him to get out of check, I can actually calculate each one and decide on what is the absolute best next move.
So this means if you study a position well enough and that situation happens in a match, you can have an exact pre-planned answer for the situation, which both helps with you not freezing in the match because you already know what to do when the situation occurs, but you can also high rep drill these positions to even prepare your muscle endurance and timing for these positions so you're really prepared for when they happen.
So this method is extremely strong, but it starts to fail when your problem becomes too large or there's too many variables. If we're dealing with something like finishing an armbar, we can break that down to a couple different situations. But if you're dealing with something as broad as passing the open guard as a whole, there's maybe millions of options. His legs could be high, they could be low, wide legs, he could be sitting up, leaning on his left, leaning on his right. There's so many things to calculate. You can't say for sure what the best move is. If you were playing chess, even the world's most powerful supercomputer still cannot tell you what the best first move is in chess. A quick, simple example would be if I have a new student and I'm trying to teach them how to pass the guard, it's much easier and much more effective for me to just tell them, get around the legs and hold them, than it would be for me to try to sit down and break down a hypothetical if-then based upon every possible situation their opponent could be in. Not only is it going to be overwhelming and frustrating, but it's going to give them analysis paralysis when they roll. So a simple model of get around the legs is actually a much better tool in the beginning for someone. Again, using a chess analogy, nowadays computers can always beat humans, but even up to around 20 years ago, humans were still able to beat computers sometimes despite how many more decisions they can make. And the reason is that when they looked at most top chess players playing, with almost immediately they eliminated 95% of the move options because they had basic principles that they would follow. In chess, these principles are things like don't move the same piece twice because you're wasting moves. Always keep your king protected. These are general guidelines or rules that you can follow that help allow you to eliminate a lot of bad possible decisions. So because we can generate really useful, simple principles we can follow, we can truncate and eliminate 90% of the options in a situation, which makes you able to make much faster, quick decisions in situations you may not have ever even been in before. In jiu-jitsu, principles like this will manifest as things like distance creates leverage on your opponent. Your opponent needs to take away distance to be able to pass the guard. Your opponent cannot pass your guard if both shoulder blades are not pinned to the mat. Or there can never be a guard pass if your feet are somewhere in between your chest and your opponent's chest. So these don't tell you exactly where to be in every situation, but often when you're in trouble, these quick little principles can help you come up with fast, creative solutions to problems by just following those general truths.